This is the channel which made this video. I've used, I don't know why that's on now, I must have watched it on one of my other channels. But this is the video, well anyway, with the more secrets. You see, let's just watch the video, and even though this is the most stupid thing to say, for entertainment purposes only, that's what it is. I have 5 channels on YouTube. I can't remember which ones it all is, but I've been putting videos out basically saying, you know, what the hell's going on? Come on, it's hundreds of names have not come out yet from the Epstein files. You know, and then you find out that really what Charles was doing is now mentioned in the Epstein files as well. It's like, what the hell is going on? It's like a roundup, hopefully, of all these people who have lied to us. And you know, I've been making videos saying he should go, because if you're going to be like that, then he has to be treated the same. And then what it was is I made another video saying, well, do we want William? His dad and his uncle and his aunt and who else of the royal family have been doing this. And then I remembered that I put this video out about King George in the Second World War and what he did. So in case you are thinking, oh, they'll never do it again, they do it again, they do it again, and they do it again. Look, Keir Starmer refuses to resign. He needs to go as well. They're disgusting. They all need to go. All in one big swoop. We need something different now. But anyway, let's just listen to that video.
However, whilst researching something completely different, I started to come across the very outer edges of something which I think should be made public concerning King George VI in World War II. This secret operation that I've uncovered you won't find referenced in any history books about King George VI or the Second World War, or if you do, they are the most oblique references possible. The only place you will find references to this are the Royal Archives at Windsor Castle, which is where I discovered the documents to make this video. The operation was kept secret. It was deliberately kept from the British people for a very good reason, which I will outline shortly. George VI in World War II gave the House of Windsor's British image. So come World War II, the same problem arose once again. The British King's German relatives were on the wrong side. And not only the wrong side, but some of them had apparently gone to the dark side, with particularly close relationships with a certain failed Austrian painter and his friends that would put them beyond the pale for decades to come. Ernest Augustus, Duke of Brunswick, had married the daughter of Britain's arch-enemy in World War I, Kaiser Wilhelm II. A gathering that had taken place at House Dorn, the Kaiser's Dutch residence, where the Kaiser had lived in exile since the early 1920s. A gathering that took place in 1939 to celebrate the old emperor's 80th birthday. Out of the blue, a telegram had arrived from Buckingham Palace. She writes, quote, "What pleased my father particularly was the fact that he had been remembered by the King and Queen of England. Throughout King George V's reign, the English court had, since 1914, completely ignored the Kaiser's very existence. Now, 25 years after the outbreak of the First World War, the King's son, George VI, had sent his heartiest congratulations." End quote. Now, I wonder what the millions of households across Britain who had lost sons during the First World War against the Kaiser's armies, and the hundreds of thousands of living veterans who had survived that terrible war, would have thought of their king sending birthday congratulations to the man who had started that terrible war, and had, in fact, been officially listed as a war criminal at the end of it. It seems an odd thing to have done, but from the perspective of the royals, such social niceties only reinforce the cosy relationship between the various royal houses, somehow disassociated from the realities of history and politics. Anyway, this is a good indication that King George VI was very much a member of that Royal Trade Union, as some historians have called it, and he was to aptly aptly demonstrate this 6 years later at the conclusion of yet another bloody war against the Germans. So how had the Duke of Brunswick managed during the Nazi period? Though his dynasty no longer ruled in Brunswick, having lost their position at the end of World War I, he still retained enormous land holdings, many different palaces and castles, and enormous wealth. World War II was a tricky one for Ernest Augustus, remembering that, as well as being a German, he had also, like his father until 1917, been a British prince. Interestingly, in 1936, following Edward's abdication, the newly minted Duke of Windsor and his wife Wallis had stayed with the Duke at Cumberland Castle in Germany. Ernest Augustus never formally joined the Nazi Party, though it has emerged he attempted to join in 1941, but he did donate funds to the Nazis and was close to several of the top Nazi leaders. The Duke of Brunswick had married, as I mentioned, the Kaiser's daughter, Princess Victoria Louisa of Prussia. She herself was a great-granddaughter of Queen Victoria. Towards the end of World War II, the Duke and his wife resided at Blankenburg Castle. By April 1945, the US Army was rapidly approaching the village of Blankenburg and the Harz Mountains region, which was being defended by what remained of the German 11th Army. For the first time, Blankenburg was directly threatened by enemy action. US artillery fire struck the town, and aircraft also attacked it. Patients from the local hospital were evacuated to the castle for safety, including wounded German soldiers. But the castle was also crammed full of art treasures and precious items, much of it owned by the royal family, others evacuated to the castle from museums for safekeeping. The cellars were also crammed with boxes of German Foreign Office files from Joachim von Ribbentrop's department, containing all the documentary evidence of pre-war German diplomatic contacts with Britain and other nations. The local military commandant informed the Duke that the castle would not be included in his regional defense plan, to hopefully spare it and its treasures from destruction. On the 20th of April 1945, Hitler's 56th and last birthday, the headquarters staff of the 11th Army had been taken prisoner by the Americans. Blankenburg also fell. US forces drove up to the castle itself, according to Princess Victoria Louisa, quote, shooting wildly and indiscriminately, behaving generally just like Texas cowboys, end quote. Due to the agreed post-war occupation zones of Germany, Blankenburg was in the British zone, and British troops arrived to take over from the Americans. Princess Victoria Louisa wrote that the British authorities were most interested in the crates of German Foreign Office files in the castle's cellars. She wrote that the local British commander told her that the files contained copies of documents that had been distributed elsewhere, and that they were not only requisitioning them, that they would be taking them away as well. However, the princess revealed that before the British could organize the crates transfer, US officers arrived and ordered the princess to open the cellars, whereupon the crates were transferred to US Army trucks by a unit of black GIs and driven away. She noted that the British returned a few days later and the Duke showed them the empty cellars. Quote, "There were some long faces among them," noted the princess. Which brings me to the event that I discovered concerning the British king and his German royal relatives in their castle at Blankenburg. According to the London Protocol of 1944, the Free State of Brunswick was supposed to form part of the British zone of occupation. However, a month after the Allies had captured Blankenburg, the British made a geographical adjustment to the local boundary between the British and Soviet zones, an adjustment that would place Blankenburg in the Soviet zone of occupation. The Duke was naturally horrified to learn that his castle and all of his own treasures, antiques and assorted chattels would soon find themselves in Soviet hands. As I mentioned, the castle had also been operating as a collecting point for other Brunswick art treasures from regional museums. The Duke had also brought to the castle valuables from yet another of his own properties, Herrenhausen, to protect them from Allied bombing. A special Allied art treasure collecting centre had been established at Keller, 30 miles northwest of Brunswick, under German art dealer E.J. Otto. At Blankenburg Castle, the provincial conservator Karl Sedke was in overall charge of the treasures. Somehow, news of the plight of the Brunswicks reached Buckingham Palace, and King George VI, the Duke of Brunswick's cousin. An order, and it was an order as I will shortly show, was issued by King George VI through the chain of command to the British 11th Armoured Division and its 159th Infantry Brigade. Brigadier J.B. Churcher must have informed the commanding officer of the 1st Battalion, the Cheshire Regiment, an infantry battalion, to send a party of men, several dozen strong, and 30 army trucks to Blankenburg Castle. Captain Paul McConnell was given command of the operation, and absolutely no mention or word of this operation could be found in the 1st Battalion Cheshire Regiment's war diary, even though I and the regimental historian checked it very carefully. It was almost as if the operation was secret, which becomes blindingly obvious once you start to research it in detail. A British member of the famous Monuments Men Art Protection Unit was dispatched to Blankenburg to help sort out the items and aid in their removal. That officer was Major Felix Harbord of the Royal Engineers. The operation would involve the removal of the museum collections from Blankenburg to the Allied Art Collection Point at Keller, but also, and this is the important point, primarily the packing up and removal by British soldiers using British Army transport of the private treasures, property, furniture and other chattels of the Duke of Brunswick, and its removal to another of his properties, Marienburg Castle. In this case, men of the Cheshire Regiment, newly begun on occupation duties in defeated Germany, were ordered by the highest authority of all, that is King George VI, to act as removals men, tasked with days of hard labour, carrying privately owned art, antiques, furniture, rugs, tapestries and china, and the entire contents of that castle, and safely transporting this material to another privately owned castle, diverting them from the duties that they had joined up to perform, royal removals not being part of the British Infantry's Handbook of Operations. That this operation was ordered by King George VI to help his close German relative is undoubtedly true, and that it was kept secret is undoubtedly true.